Okay, what I'd like to do for 5 minutes is to go over the levels of motivation, and then we'll talk about some of these other topics. Okay. So the lowest level Maslow called physiological needs. These are what he called basic needs. So we can't exist without food and water, shelter. We need some kind of exercise physically. It has to do with the body. It's the basis. If you think about this, let's say you're very hungry. You can't concentrate in class if you haven't eaten all day. Or if you have a fever, it's very hard to concentrate if you're sick. You can try, but it won't be very successful. So this is the lowest level of motivations. In a rich country like Japan or the United States, almost every worker has physiological needs met. So that's not really an important concern. In some poor countries, this becomes relevant, where people may not have eaten a nutritious meal, or they may not be feeling well because of infectious diseases. So the basic level is the physiological level. The next level of motivation is safety needs. And this has to do with primarily physical safety. In the workplace, how safe is the environment? And again, in a country like Japan or the United States, most employees feel physically safe. We don't feel that the roof is going to collapse here. We don't feel that the building is a poor structure, but in some countries the situation is very different. The buildings are very poorly made. There's not a sense of physical safety. Also, safety involves a sense of law and order. So Japan is one of the most safe countries in the world with very low violent crime. I think the lowest of any industrialized country. The United States is much higher, but in some countries people feel very unsafe at work. When I lectured in Brazil before graduate students, they asked me, can a person self-actualize if they don't feel their safety needs are met? Because there are kidnappings. Even people who are middle class could be kidnapped and held for ransom. So it was a very poignant question. They wanted to know what Maslow would say about that. So in my country, since the events of 9/11, many people in certain fields don't feel physical safety because of a fear of terrorism. I think it's less now, but this was true in New York City where I work. My office is across from the Empire State Building. All of you have been to New York, I'm sure have been to the Empire State Building. So my office is in a building right across the street. And for 1 or 2 years after 9/11, some people were afraid to come to my office because everyone said if there would be another terrorist attack, that would be the next building to be hit by an airplane or a massive bomb, would be the Empire State Building. I wasn't afraid, but some people were very afraid about this. But this is part of our nature. We need physical safety. There have been some interesting studies about American workers. The thing that they complain the most about in terms of their physical environment, is that they feel cold too often in cold weather. Many companies save money by keeping the heat down. I've been in businesses and in hospitals where I was cold. It was too cold even to type because the owners didn't want to spend money on heat. Heat is very expensive in the United States. I'm not sure how it is in Japan. So just to share that, that's the major physical complaint with workers in the United States, is they feel cold in their workplace. And here I'm talking about in the winters, of course. You go up the hierarchy and you have what Maslow called belongingness. This is the need to feel part of a group identity. I think in Japanese society this is handled better than probably any country in the world. It starts very early in your educational system. Children work as a row in the classroom. They work together in a class. They compete against other schools, but there's a sense of cohesiveness, a sense of belongingness that we don't have in the United States. We have the most individualistic society in the world, I think. But in work, most American workers do feel a sense of belongingness. In English, there's a word, camaraderie. And this means that you joke, you have a good time. In American companies and business, men talk about sports, they tell jokes, sometimes they talk about TV shows. So this need is met, that is, most American workers feel a sense of belongingness. I'm sure this is true in Japanese society, which emphasizes this so much. Going up the hierarchy, you have needs for esteem. Sometimes, as Dr. Mashida mentioned, we call this self-esteem. That is, that you have a need to like yourself. But also Maslow said we have a need to be liked by our coworkers. That is, to be liked as individuals. This is different from being part of a group. Here, these are people that like you at work, that know you as an individual, that like your interests. Maybe they listen to the same kind of music that you do, or they follow the same sports team, or they watch the same TV shows. But it has to do with liking you as a person. And people have this need to be liked, to have friends, and to be valued as an individual.